you literally tear the fabric of the nation apart. And that's what this president has done from day one. The old political strategy, divide and conquer. Divide white from black, divide Jewish people from non-Jewish people, divide gay people, LGBTQ, from non-LGBTQ, divide old immigrants from new immigrants, divide, 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 divide. That's what he excelled at. He marshaled hate. He marshaled fear. And that's what you saw happen in the Capitol. You look at what these people were celebrating. There was racism. There was anti-Semitism, Camp Auschwitz. How disgusting a statement. 6 million weren't enough. How repugnant and repulsive a statement. Confederate flag. This was the KKK in Charlottesville, who didn't wear a mask because they felt liberated in their hate by President Trump. It's so horrific on so many levels. I was in the federal government for 8 years at a very contentious time. I was there during the Clinton administration, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. This was during impeachment. This was the Newt Gingrich revolution. This was a really heated political environment. But nothing like this. Nothing like this. Nothing like the vitriol and hate that we saw here. From a security point of view, I'm shocked at what they allowed to happen. I remember walking into a federal building, you had to go through metal detectors, take everything out of your pockets as a cabinet secretary. The security of government, the security of the American government, that is paramount. And international countries and anarchy groups watch this. State of the Union address. Several times, I was the cabinet member who didn't attend the State of the Union. Why? They were so security conscious that they said, well, if everyone is in the state capitol, it's an opportunity for someone to attack. So they had one cabinet member stay out, just in case there was, God forbid, an attack. Look at the level of security and the level of planning. And then they gave me all these briefings and showed me all these national security issues. What happened to the security of the nation's capital? I mean, if you're looking at this, any bunch of thugs, any mob can literally take over the government, which is what they did. The police, what happened? What happened to the security forces? I mean, look at the difference when President Trump wanted to walk across the street to hold the Bible in front of a church for a photo opportunity. He had the Attorney General as the advance man. He had troops. He had tear gas. He had people on horseback clearing the way for a photo opportunity. When there are protests for civil rights with predominantly black and Latino protesters, look at how they acted. And here you had for hours this crowd running rampant. They said to me at the beginning of it, maybe we should send down National Guard. I said, well, by the time we assemble the National Guard and we get them down there would be hours. I'm sure, given the police presence in Washington, D.C., they're going to have thousands of police in a matter of moments. It never happened. It never occurred. How does that happen? And what signal does it send about the vulnerability of this nation? I mean, it is so disturbing on so many levels. I'll tell you the truth. I can't stop thinking about it. This, my friends, is a moment in history. There are moments. What did you do at the time of 9/11? What was your reaction? What was your response? There are moments that define you, that are a picture of your character and a picture of your soul and what you believe and who you are fundamentally. COVID was a snapshot, a long snapshot, but a snapshot. What did you do when COVID happened? How did you react? Did you stand up? Did you run away? Were you competent? Were you incompetent? It was a moment. This is a moment in history. And we're going to be defined by what we did in this moment. Certainly elected officials are going to be defined by this moment. Certainly federal elected officials are going to be defined by this moment. It's what statement we make as a people about what we believe about government and democracy. I believe President Trump should resign. I believe if he doesn't resign, I believe he should be impeached. Well, he only has 13 days. That's not the point. The point is the statement that we do not tolerate this as a government. That's why impeachment. Now, impeachment will bring great anguish to the country. The last thing I want to see, and this nation needs, is another period of division, another period of hyper-political activity. But if he won't resign, I believe impeachment is appropriate. By the way, impeachment also means the president doesn't have the power to pardon. And some of the pardons this president has done are really reprehensible. But I believe if he doesn't resign, he should be impeached. But I believe he should resign. I call on every New York federal official to call for President Trump's resignation. Don't put the country through an impeachment. Don't wait for any cabinet action. Call for him to resign as his own act, but call for him to resign. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care what you are. You're a government official. You took an oath. You saw the anarchy. You saw the hatred. You saw the vandalism. You saw the theft. You saw the breakdown of society. You saw this nation look like a joke internationally. Put your politics aside and do what any reasonable American believes. Now, even in this political time, we still have reasonable Americans. There is no reasonable American who looked at that screen and saw what happened and said, this is okay. There's no reasonable American who saw what the president did and said, this is okay. None. Are there hate mongers who say, yeah, that's right, overthrow the government? Sure there are. Sure there are those voices. But don't respond to those voices. Don't respond to those voices. Respond to what reasonable Americans, reasonable New Yorkers believe, responsible New Yorkers believe. Put principle over party. There is no Republican or Democratic elected official, federal official, who can look in the mirror today and say, I condone what happened. I condone what this president did? None. You support an orderly transition of power? President Trump resigns. Vice President Pence takes over. Vice President Pence governs for the remaining days. That's an orderly transition of power and a statement of principle. Make that statement today. If you don't, you will live with it forever. And the question is simple. Were you with the mob, or are you with the American people? If you're a New York federal representative, are you with the mob, or are you with New Yorkers? That's what I ask you today. New Yorkers, Democrats and Republicans, they don't support mob rule. They don't support racism. They don't support anti-Semitism. They don't support discrimination. They don't support anarchy. No New Yorker does. And if they do, I don't care if you're a Republican. You don't want to represent those sentiments. You don't. No responsible elected official should. Let our congressional delegation show this country that we still have reasonable leadership and principled leadership, and say, yes, this president should resign. The president should resign. Show that solidarity. Show that, yes, there is some common sense left to government and some decency left in elected officials, despite the crazy political times. And if you don't, you will live with it. You will live with it. The question will always be, what did you do when Washington anarchy descended? What did you do when they were climbing through the windows saying 6 million dead Jewish people wasn't enough? What did you do at that moment? And you'll live with the consequences.
Hi, everyone. I have some very exciting news that I want to share with you. But before I do that, do you remember how in early December we wrote a letter to the federal government on behalf of the thousands of international students to make their postgraduate work permits renewable? We joined with many students, organizations across the province and asked the federal government for their support. Today, due to the collective hard work of so many international students and organizations, we finally heard a response that makes us very hopeful. The federal government has announced that graduating international students can now apply for an open work permit for 18 months. This pandemic has been a challenge for all of us, including all the international students, especially because it made it almost impossible to fulfill their work requirements to help them apply for permanent residency. We know that these students continue to be an important part of our community, and their contributions to our province and this country have been remarkable. I want to take a moment to thank all the students and the organizations, my colleagues who joined me and continue to push for this, to support and stand up for international students. I also want to thank and truly recognize the incredible organizers of the many petitions with thousands and thousands of signatures, the campaigns. Thank all of you who shared your beautiful stories. And of course, I want to thank the federal government for listening to us, for listening to people's voices and concerns. And to all the international students, I know many challenges remain, and I will be with you in every step of the way. To see the details of the announcement today, check out our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
Hello everyone, bon vendredi tout le monde. I'd like to begin by addressing what unfolded in Washington, D.C. this week. What we witnessed was an assault on democracy by violent rioters, incited by the current president and other politicians. As shocking, deeply disturbing, and frankly saddening as that event remains, We've also seen this week that democracy is resilient in America, our closest ally and neighbor. Violence has no place in our societies, and extremists will not succeed in overruling the will of the people. As Canadians, I think we've been all reflecting on our own country, something I spoke with the premiers about last night, about the fact that democracy is not automatic. It takes work every day, about what a real accomplishment it is to maintain a political system in which the losing side gracefully concedes and in which rival political parties between elections work together for the common good. We have this in Canada because Canadians make it possible. Canadians expect their political leaders to protect our precious democracy by how we conduct ourselves. We have seen this manifest in unanimous consent in our Parliament for our main COVID-fighting measures at a time when the government holds a minority of seats. We see it in the cooperation between the federal government and provincial and territorial governments, regardless of political stripe. Canadians expect debate. Debate in service of all Canadians. Debate that is grounded in a shared acceptance of the facts. In a diverse country, there will always be diverse perspectives, and it is through respect for those differences that we create a stronger Canada. Canadian democracy didn't happen by accident, and it won't continue without work. We must always work to secure our democracy and not give comfort to those who promote things that are not true or give space for hatred or extremism. Hier, lors de notre 24e réunion des premiers ministres des provinces et territoires, on a commencé par parler de ce qui s'est passé aux États-Unis cette semaine. On a tous été choqués de voir des extrémistes incités par le président agir avec autant de violence pour saccager le Capitole à Washington. Ça nous rappelle à quel point on ne peut pas prendre notre démocratie pour acquis. La démocratie au Canada, ce n'est pas un hasard et ça ne va pas continuer sans effort. Les Canadiens s'attendent à des débats honnêtes qui servent leurs intérêts. Des débats qui partagent le même ensemble de faits. Nous devons tous travailler ensemble pour protéger la démocratie contre ceux qui font la promotion de mensonges et qui créent de l'espace pour la haine et l'extrémisme. Avec les premiers ministres, on a aussi abordé la question des centres de soins de longue durée, des mesures pour les voyageurs, du dépistage et des vaccins. Notre gouvernement travaille sur les vaccins sans relâche depuis des mois. Le processus de distribution est réglé au quart de tour. La distribution des doses, surtout pour le vaccin de Pfizer, représente des défis complexes. Mais grâce aux efforts de tous, on a pu commencer à distribuer des doses plus tôt que prévu, à partir du 21 décembre. On fait tout ce qu'on peut pour obtenir le plus de vaccins possible, le plus rapidement possible. Le major général Fortin va présenter les chiffres en détail aujourd'hui. En décembre, nous avions distribué près d'1 demi-million de doses à travers le pays, incluant un peu plus de 88 000 doses au Québec. D'ici la fin janvier, ce sera environ 1,3 million de doses du vaccin de Pfizer et de Moderna qui seront livrées aux provinces et aux territoires. On veut tous que la pandémie se termine au plus vite. Des gens qui meurent, des hôpitaux débordés, des emplois menacés, ça fait plaisir à personne de voir ça. On est en temps de crise et les Canadiens veulent des résultats. Je les comprends et je leur promets qu'on travaille sans relâche. On continue de collaborer, tous les ordres de gouvernement ensemble, comme une grande équipe. Plus que jamais, c'est le temps de rassembler nos forces pour battre la COVID-19 une bonne fois pour toutes. Yesterday, at our 24th First Ministers' meeting, the Premiers and I discussed the vaccine rollout across the country. We agreed that it is vital that we work together as Team Canada to get vaccines delivered, distributed and administered as quickly and efficiently as possible. The premiers and I also discussed ways to combat misinformation. Vaccines are safe and effective, and everyone should be doing their part by getting vaccinated once it's their turn. This week, over 124,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine were delivered to 68 sites across the country. Over 208 Pfizer doses will be delivered weekly for the rest of January. On Moderna, by the end of next week, over 171,000 doses will be delivered to the provinces and territories. We're on track to deliver approximately 1.3 million doses of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines by the end of January. Quantities of both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine will scale up in February. Remember that Canada has the most vaccines secured per capita in the world, which means that by September, we will have enough vaccines for every Canadian who wants one. Our top priority remains keeping you and your family safe. I know things are tough right now. Frankly, it's frightening to see cases rise at home and around the world day after day. But you're not in this alone. We continue to be there for you. We're continuing to send millions of pieces of PPE to protect healthcare workers and communities. We will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. For you, for family, for your communities, we will have your backs. And on that note, I can also confirm that yesterday, the Canadian Armed Forces approved a request for support to the Fort Albany First Nation in Ontario as they deal with the COVID-19 outbreak. The Canadian Rangers will be activated on the ground until at least January 11th. By working together, we will get through this. Alors que plusieurs provinces annoncent des mesures plus strictes pour diminuer la propagation de la COVID-19, plusieurs personnes s'inquiètent de ce que ça signifie pour leur emploi et pour leur famille. Notre gouvernement va continuer d'être là pour vous. Ce matin, nous avons appris que l'économie canadienne a perdu 63 000 emplois en décembre, surtout des emplois liés à l'industrie du service. Depuis le début de la pandémie, notre gouvernement a agi rapidement pour soutenir notre économie et pour soutenir directement les Canadiens. Vous pouvez être certain qu'on fait tout ce qu'on peut pour vous aider à traverser ces moments difficiles. Measures like the wage subsidy are making a real difference for workers and businesses who need it. For a promising new company like StrongPoint in Toronto, the wage subsidy helped keep employees on the payroll when things got tough in the spring. It was a lifeline for them. The same goes for staff at the communication firm, the Humphrey Group. The wage subsidy helped them retain their hard-working employees and get ready for recovery. It's not good news for anyone if local businesses have to close shop for good because of this global crisis. In the second wave, this is not the time to take the foot off the gas. It's the time to keep doing everything we need to ensure that our economy stays resilient and that workers and families can weather this storm. Mercredi, Québec a annoncé un renforcement et un prolongement des mesures de confinement. C'est important que vous sachiez que le gouvernement fédéral est là pour soutenir les provinces alors qu'elles doivent prendre des décisions difficiles. Pour les Québécois et pour tous les Canadiens, les mesures sont en place pour vous aider. La subvention salariale est là pour les travailleurs et les petites entreprises. Pour ceux qui en ont besoin, on a changé l'assurance-emploi pour soutenir un plus grand nombre de personnes. On ne vous laissera pas tomber. Comme je l'ai dit plus tôt, les vaccins continuent d'être livrés et on a des raisons de rester optimistes. Pour l'instant, il faut suivre les directives de la santé publique. Restez chez vous, évitez les rassemblements et servez-vous de l'application gratuite Alerte COVID. Ceux qui décident de voyager à l'encontre des avis de la santé publique doivent faire une quarantaine obligatoire de 2 semaines en rentrant au pays. Si cette quarantaine n'est pas respectée, les conséquences légales sont très sévères. Depuis hier, il est aussi obligatoire pour les voyageurs d'avoir un résultat de test de COVID-19 négatif avant de pouvoir prendre l'avion pour leur retour. Quand on se compare avec les autres pays, nos mesures aux frontières sont parmi les plus strictes au monde. Now, more than ever, it is crucial that you keep doing your part to protect yourself, to help our healthcare workers, and to save lives. Wear your mask, avoid gatherings, and use the COVID Alert app. The app has now been updated to work on older models of iPhones, such as the iPhone 5, 6, and 6 Plus. Almost 6 million people have downloaded the app. And of course, the more Canadians use it, the more powerful this tool becomes. So keep it up, and remember, we're all in this together. This morning, I'd like to take a moment to recognize that today marks the one-year anniversary of the Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752 tragedy. As a country, we remember all those we lost, and we mourn with their families and friends. Of the victims aboard that flight, 138 of them were on their way to Canada. To the family members and friends who had planned to pick their loved ones up at the airport, to everyone who was looking forward to seeing your beloved partner, child, or parent, I cannot imagine your pain. Know that you are in our thoughts today. This kind of unthinkable tragedy must never happen again. That's why, over the past year, our government developed the Safer Skies Initiative and worked with partners around the world to help keep civilian aircraft away from dangerous conflict zones. Today, on the first National Day of Remembrance for Victims of Air Disasters, we remember and honor all those we lost. The victims of PS 752, just like the victims of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, Air India Flight 182, and other air disasters, will never be forgotten. We will be there for each other through tough times. It's what Canadians do. Whether it's grieving for elders we lost in long-term care homes, whether it's mourning together for victims of international tragedies, or whether it's standing with courageous young people like Isabella Kulak, a member of Cote First Nation Saskatchewan, who wore her ribbon skirt to school to celebrate her culture last month. Let's remember who we are, people who are there for each other. In tough times, we pull together. We look out for each other. We support each other. It's what Canadians have learned to do through generations of dealing with winter, dealing with vast spaces, being there for each other, being there for our neighbors. We need to make it through this winter now. We need to pull together while staying apart. We need to hang in there. Spring is coming. Summer is coming. It always does. This one will be better if we can pull together right. So stay safe, everyone, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Hi there, my name's Melissa, and I'm hoping we're going to have some fun together being creative at home. My easy holiday craft project is called Pom-Pom Wreath, and I'll be using materials that I have around my house. So let's begin. Materials that you'll need are cardboard. So I just have some cardboard. You know, I also have used paper plates. This one is actually made from a paper plate, so you can use paper plates. And if you want to get very fancy, you can use a wreath shape. But I'm probably just going to use cardboard today. You'll also need a pencil to help draw the shape on the wreath. You'll need some scissors so you can cut out your cardboard. And if your cardboard is too hard, maybe you could ask somebody to help you with it. You'll need glue. I like using white glue for this because the glue disappears. And you'll need pom-poms. Look at this, so many pom-poms, that's awesome. The last thing that we're going to need is string, because when your glue has all dried, then you'll be able to hang up your pom-pom wreath in the window. All right, let's begin. Okay, So I'm going to use my cardboard, and I think I'm going to make it a sort of a medium-sized shaped cardboard, so it's not too big. So I'll make my middle circle, and then I will make my outer circle. Now, if this maybe isn't dark enough, so I'll draw it with my marker so you can see it. Here's my middle circle, and then here's my outer circle. See, I'm not perfect. Doesn't need to be perfect. Let's cut this out. Okay, here we go. See, it's kind of firm with the cardboard, so if you need somebody to help you, maybe you can get somebody who's strong that can help cut out as well. My shape is ready, so let's clear up my space a little bit. I'll put that in the recycling. Okay, so now's the good part. Now I get to start bringing in my pom-poms, and I get to pick, I'm gonna strategically pick some big ones first, and I'll start gluing the big ones first, and then I'll glue some smaller ones around it. So let's get some glue out and give this a start. My glue stick. Okay. So I'm just going to use white glue because, like I said before, the white glue tends to disappear when I work with when I work with the white glue. It just dries and then disappears. So I am choosing to do a very bright, colorful one. I want to have a whole assortment of colors on mine. Sometimes you can work with a theme, and a theme could be maybe you want an all white pom-pom, or maybe an all red pom-pom wreath. It's up to you. It's really your choice. But because I like candy, I like color assortments, so I'm gonna have a bunch of different colors on mine. Oh, see how I'm kind of squeezing in some of those other spots. So not only am I placing big ones in there, but I'm also choosing some small ones in the gaps so that there'll be no cardboard left. All right, I'm going to play away. Now look at that cutie. So I'm going to set the wreath aside to let it dry. Probably about 3 hours it will need. But as you saw before, I completed one beforehand that I made with a paper plate. And so I'll put a string on it after it's dry so that I can hang in my window. So cute. I could put a couple more tiny ones if I want, but I like how it looks. So this was my fun, colorful one. I wanted to show you one that I did before that is all themed in white, because you can make all different types that you want. So here's a fun big white one. This one took me a long time to make, not as fast as this little one. So have fun, be creative, and thank you very much for joining me, and hope to see you next time. Bye.
বাংলাদেশি ইন্ডিয়ান ও পাকিস্তানি সহ এশিয়ান পোশাকের বিপুল সমারোহ নিয়ে আগামী ঈদ আয়োজনে নতুন সাজে সুসজ্জিত ভাসাভিস নাহিদস কালেকশন। ঈদ ও পূজায় আপনার পরিবারের সকলের চাহিদা পূরণের জন্য সব ধরনের কেনাকাটা করতে চলে আসুন আমাদের ভাসাভিস নাহিদস কালেকশনে। এক্সক্লুসিভ শাড়ি, পার্টি অ্যান্ড ব্রাইডাল লেহেঙ্গা, ব্রাইডসমেড ড্রেসেস, গাউনস, লং ড্রেস, থ্রি-পিস, জুয়েলারি, লেডিস ও জেন্টস শু, ইন্দো ওয়েস্টার্ন কোট, পাঞ্জাবি, শেরওয়ানি ও কিডস কালেকশন সহ সাজানো হয়েছে ভাসাভিস নাহিদস কালেকশন। এছাড়া বিয়ে ও গায়ে হলুদের আধুনিক ওয়েডিং কালেকশন, আরও থাকছে ব্রাইডাল ওয়েডিং স্টুডিও। এজন্য সবই একই ছাদের নিচে ওয়ান স্টপ সার্ভিস। তাই আজই চলে আসুন আমাদের ভাসাভিস নাহিদস কালেকশনে। 3456 ডেনফোর্থ অ্যাভিনিউ, টরন্টো, অন্টারিও। ফোন 647-831-4876।
We are still speeding in the wrong direction, and the world has also emitted more than 200.
know that this is the program, this is a platform where we talk about the range of issues of South Asia on environment, climate change, and related public health. And today, we are also going to talk about a very important issue. It's a new year. First of all, I should say Happy New Year to all of you. But this year with happy, we are adding another word, happy and healthy New Year. All of us are so concerned about this COVID. So everybody's writing happy and healthy New Year. So happy and healthy New Year to all my panelists. Happy and healthy New Year to all who are seeing this program. You know, this program is brought on by the Climate Channel, is a Canadian television channel in collaboration with No TV Bangla, a YouTube channel, and the Plural, that's an Indian media platform. So that's the structure here. And before I go for the South Asian news, and then we'll come to the discussion. Today's subject is that what is going to happen in 2021. We call it Agenda 21. All of us who are in climate change know Agenda 21. So Agenda 21, pandemic and beyond. That's today's discussion. We'll be going to talk about what happened last year, what's going to happen this year. And my panelists, I have a fabulous panel. I'm very lucky with a very fabulous panel with me. We have with me Javed Ahmed Khan. Javed Saab is the Minister of Disaster Management and Civil Defense, Government of West Bengal, India. He has been the minister for the last 10 years. Not only for that, he is here because he will be talking about Amphan, the biggest cyclone to hit the world this year, the costliest cyclone in one of the poorest part of the world. So we'll be hearing from Javed Saab what has happened at that point of time and how he's planning to counter any such future endeavors, future events. So Javed Saab is with us. We have with Dr. Salim Ul Haq. Dr. Salim Ul Haq is one of the noted climate expert, climate scientist. He's with the ICCCAD, and he's also the advisor to the least developed countries, one of the frontline negotiation person in the UN negotiation structure. So Dr. Haq, thank you for being in the program. Thank you very much, Janta. So,
thank you, Janta.
And I have also with me Dr. Sejal Vora. Dr. Sejal Vora is the program director, WWF India, and I think for long, Dr. Vora has been talking and working in biodiversity, in environmental issues, and a lot of issues. And we have learned so many things from Dr. Vora. Dr. Vora, so kind of you to make time for this program.
Thank you, Janta.
Thank you for being part of the program. It's a great privilege to have you. And finally, I have that person without whom this program is incomplete, Professor Rajiv Dasgupta. Professor Rajiv Dasgupta is from JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, India. He is an expert in public health and part of the many vaccine and vaccination committees, including the polio one in Government of India. And from him today, we'll be knowing about what is going on in not only in India, but in South Asia in the vaccination sector. What are the situation? So that's the panel for me. So before I start with Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, perhaps before that, very quickly, I run through some of the major news this week for all of you, mainly in South Asia. The extreme weather events are turning costly. A recent report published by Christian Aid has found that extreme weather events driven by climate change cost the world billions in 2020. Almost all the events had cost more than $5 billion each, and each of them having, as I said, more than 5 billion, and only in US, due to hurricanes and fire, more than 60 billions were lost. And very interestingly, China lost 32 billion for flood, and also India lost 10 billion for flood. And more interestingly, 6 out of these 10 events happened in Asia, with Cyclone Amphan that had struck Bay of Bengal region, including mainly India, the West Bengal state of India, and then also Bangladesh. That was the costliest cyclone. 13 billions were lost within few days. So that's all about the extreme weather events. Now, COVID has catered to some environmental advantages. According to a very recently released Central Pollution Control Board data in India, there was a significant improvement in air quality during the lockdown. Lockdown is considered from March 22nd to May 18th. It's in PM 2.5. You know, PM 2.5 is one of the major pollutant. 50% reduction in Delhi, and also the 5 most polluted cities in India, who are also part of the global top 10 most polluted cities. I mentioned Ghaziabad, Delhi, Noida, Greater Noida, and Gurgaon. The reduction is 50%. So COVID has some advantages somewhere down the line. Delhi is turning cool. The average minimum temperature in Delhi in December was the second lowest in 15 years, according to the India Meteorological Department data. The data released by IMD recently showed that minimum temperature, we call it MMT, this December was 7.1 degrees Celsius. It was 7.6 degree last year. The MMT for December in Delhi dipped below 7 degrees Celsius only once in the last 15 years. That was in way back when it was 6.7 degrees centigrade many years back, 2004 or 5, like that. So it was said that clear skies over Delhi NCR, multiple western disturbances affecting the Himalayan region, and the global impact of La Nina, Dr. Hawk will talk about that, were stated to be the major reasons behind such low minimum temperatures. And finally, Bangladesh. Biomass burning and construction have found to be the major sources of indoor and outdoor pollution, respectively, in Bangladesh. According to the findings of a recently published study by the Environment and Social Development Organization, it was found that biomass burning make up 41% of all indoor pollutants, while construction materials are responsible for 38% of all outdoor air pollutants. So those are the major news, some of the major news from the region, and we'll be discussing all those. So without any further ado, I go over to Dr. Dasgupta. Dr. Dasgupta, when are the vaccines coming? That's the question you all have. Where do we stand on the vaccines, COVID vaccines in South Asia? Very briefly.
Well, to give you a thumbnail view of the picture in South Asia, as most of you would be aware, one vaccine has been licensed for emergency use in India and another one is expected soon. Trials are ongoing for 6 to 7 candidate vaccines, some of them being indigenously developed in India and some developed in partnership with other global partners, including some of the US universities. The good news here is that India's vaccine production capability is certainly the big story in the region.
Okay.
What it also means is that India will have to prioritize both its domestic population as well as the South Asian neighbors for supplying of the vaccine, plus also be able to market it in the global vaccine market.
Okay.
So therefore, countries such as Bhutan, Nepal, Myanmar, Sri Lanka are in dialogue. This is also at least projected to be a big soft power moment from the Indian perspective. And there is certainly the potential, and it's in the air, of a new kind of regional collaboration. The first target, more or less, for each country, each of these countries, is to be able to, in the first step, be able to immunize about 20% of the population.
Okay.
Of course, prioritizing health workers, other frontline workers, and other at-risk groups. And the final issue, we can talk about it later, is the financing mechanism. So some of these countries will be purchasing, some of these countries is looking for aid-related support. For India, the first 300 million beneficiaries will be supported by the central government or the federal government. And some countries such as Bhutan are part of the WHO's initiative of procuring the vaccine. This is really the thumbnail view.
What is happening, say, around the countries like, say, Bangladesh? Is Bangladesh and India in talks? Are they in talks?
Yes, of course. Bangladesh and India is in talks. Bangladesh is preparing its logistics capacities, and Bangladesh expects, at least by available news, the first delivery towards the end of January, certainly within January, and Bangladesh should be launching its immunization campaign either in late January or certainly by early February, most likely in January. Each country actually wants to get off the block sometime during the second half of January. India, of course, will do it earlier, perhaps sometime next week after the dry runs are over.
Okay, so India will be doing almost right away. How much time India will take? Say,
India's
in the first week of
phase
Jan.
one. India's phase one, which is 300 million beneficiaries, of whom 10 million are health workers and 20 million are other frontline workers, including disaster relief personnel, defense personnel, civilian police personnel, and municipal workers, most importantly. This is the first priority group, and the 300 million beneficiaries, which is a total of 600 million doses, is likely to be completed by June, July of 2021.
Okay, so by June, July, this initial lot will be completed. You expect that?
That's the current plan.
That's the current plan. And before I go over to the next speaker, just a very quick question. There are issues of efficacies of various vaccines. So as of now, which of the vaccines you feel are on there to be kind of vaccinated for vaccination?
Well, as we speak, as you know, the vaccine is going to be produced and by the Serum Institute of India has been approved. The trial for the ICMR Bharat Biotech is being accelerated so that the data is available for review, and the national government is certainly urging all other companies who are in the trial phase to accelerate the trial, to submit the data, and it's on scrutiny of data that the final go-ahead will be given. But this is strictly for India, and other countries will either approve it on the basis of the Indian approval or other global approvals such as UK or EU and so on.
Okay, thank you, Professor Dasgupta. I think we'll be knowing more about it when we'll be coming back to you. But let me now go over to Javed Saab first. Javed Saab, you had to lead from the very front, along with the Chief Minister of West Bengal, Amphan. It's an unprecedented cyclone, and now we having the international kind of recognition. It's the costliest cyclone, one of the worst cyclone to hit the world in 2020. How bad it was?
It was a nightmare, I think everyone will agree, because the wind speed was around 270 kilometers per hour, and it devastated 16 districts out of 23 districts in the whole of West Bengal. Around 22.8 million, more than 2.8 million houses were damaged, and the cost itself is phenomenal, as we have estimated around 1,04,000 crores of rupees to be incurred for rebuilding all the things in place, bringing back to place. So it was something which is unusual for itself. Anything in India, and especially West Bengal, has not seen such a cyclone in the past few centuries.
And Javed, it was so unfortunate. I know that the cyclone Bulbul had hit almost the same region about a few months back. So you had to, I know there are areas in Sundarbans where the same houses were trashed twice over. So it's really, really bad. The people in Sundarban, who about 4.5 million people living in and around Sundarban, or in Sundarban around, maybe much more, is very bad. So I hope that you have a tough time at your hand.
Bulbul was merely on a very small stretch of area.
On the Sundarbans only, yes.
Sundarbans only. But this Amphan, it crossed 16 districts, and it was a havoc. It was a havoc. I was in Nabanna with the Chief Minister. We were witnessing on our control room the Amphan flurry, and I saw with my own eyes on the screen the eye of the cyclone, and the speed, and it was zooming, it was making a sound, just some very high, what do you call, tornado or some thing is coming down, and something is happening. So after a certain while, after around 1 hour, we felt that the speed is coming slow down, but it has went over Kolkata, and it has shaken the Kolkata so badly, and it passed over not only Kolkata, South 24 Punas, North 24 Punas, it went to Midnapur, Malda, everywhere it went, and it devastated everything in this region. So the crops, the fields, the houses, the people were all shattered, and we had suffered huge on account of this.
And you mentioned about the cost. You mentioned that about 1 lakh crore was the kind of a loss. And the Christian Aid report that I referred some time back, that's also saying the cost is coming around 96,000 to 1 lakh crore. So that's close to the figure that you have been quoting. I believe you have got certain part of that from the central government so far. Not much.
Yeah, we got peanut. We can call it a peanut, because they have given only 2,700 crores rupees of the estimated, according to NDRF report or the estimates which they prepared. It was 35,000 crores rupees worth, more than 35,000 crore worth, but they have given only 2,700 crores rupees only as grant or as NDRF support. But out of that also, they have only given us till now 2,200.
So lot are in due. I'll come back to Javasavi to know from you that what you are planning in future to combat such disaster. You must be having some kind of a plan and all that. So I'll come back to you after that. But before that, let me go to Salim Saab. Dr. Hawk, that you have heard Javed Saab saying that amount of disaster, and also I think Amphan had also impacted, Bulbul also impacted definitely Bangladesh. And now we know that this costliest cyclones are happening in the poorest parts of the world. So what's your take on that? 2020 it happens. Is it going to repeat in 2021? Dr. Hawk.
Thank you very much, Jayanta, and thank you to the other speakers for their contributions. So let me say a little bit about Amphan and cyclones more generally in the context of climate change. So in my view, the year 2020, which has just passed less than 48 hours ago, has been not only the year of COVID-19, obviously that is the big news, but it's also the year in which we have crossed over into a climate changed world. The world is now already temperature, because of human-induced climate change, above 1 degree centigrade compared to pre-industrial. And that is changing the whole weather system around the world. And Amphan is a very good example. You know, Amphan was a super cyclone when it was in the Bay of Bengal, as the Honorable Minister just mentioned. And it became a super cyclone because of the elevated sea surface temperature in the Bay of Bengal at that time. It was unusually hot sea surface temperature that made Amphan into a super cyclone. And that had the devastation that you just heard about in West Bengal and in India. Fortunately for Bangladesh, it hit India first and then came through the Sundarbans and hit Bangladesh, and the damage was not as much, but there's very considerable damage in Bangladesh. But I would say there is an associated good news story as well, which is that in Bangladesh, we were able to evacuate more than 2.5 million people. You know, super cyclones of this magnitude have happened in decades past. You know, in the 91, we had a big one, killed more than 100,000 people. In 73, we had one that killed over several 100,000 people. This time, the deaths were in the few dozens only. And that's because more than 2.5 million people were evacuated and took shelter. So we have one of the best early warning and shelter systems in the world, which has brought the human death to practically zero. But still, there's still a lot of damage. And as you mentioned, the economic damage of crops and infrastructure and houses, this is real. That is enormous. And many people are not able to go back to their homes, and they're living in embankments or they're living in the slums of the cities now. So going forward, what is it that we need to be worried about? We need to be worried that this is now becoming the new normal. Before, a super cyclone would come once every 10, 20 years. The Honorable Minister said they don't have a record for a very long time for something like this. They better get used to it. It's going to happen again. We have no way to avoid it. We just have to be better prepared. We just have to be able to deal with it. And we are not the only ones. The same thing has happened in the Caribbean, where they also have regular hurricanes, they call them, in the Caribbean, which hit Central America and the United States. They had so many hurricanes this year that they ran out of names. You know, they do them alphabetically. They up to 26, where they hit the letter Z, and then they had to go into the Greek alphabet to go to the number of hurricanes. They had more than 30 hurricanes hit, some of them very devastating in Central America. And they had wildfires in California and Australia. So global climate change is now becoming global, pervasive, and something we are going to have to get used to. There's no way we can avoid these things in the future. And we need to be better prepared for them.
Absolutely, we need to be better prepared for that. A very quick supplementary question. You mentioned about US. US, I'm looking at the report that US has the highest loss in this year. It's very, very, I think, ironic that the US under Donald Trump has always been kind of countering climate change as not the real thing. And US has the highest loss, more than 60 billion for the hurricanes, as you said, they ran out of names, and also the fire. But what is more important, Zalim Saab, which I need your brief input before I go to Dr. Voda for other environmental issues, is that the displacement. We are talking about the cost, but Amphan only has displaced 4.9 million people, and Indian flood has displaced 4 million. So about 9 million people being displaced by this extreme weather event. So how do you see to that?
Absolutely important point, Jayanta. So in the global climate change arena under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, where the countries come together to discuss these issues, this particular issue comes under the heading of loss and damage. These are impacts that are occurring, that people are losing their livelihoods, losing their homes, they're being forced to migrate. So they're effectively becoming climate migrants, although we don't use that term. We call them displaced people because of climate change, but they are effectively climate migrants. And this is not their fault. It's not even the country's fault. It's not India's fault, Bangladesh's fault. It's the polluters of the world's fault. So we need to be discussing this at the global arena, and hopefully later this year, now in November, we will have the next conference of parties of the UN Framework Convention in Glasgow in Scotland, COP26. This will be one of the issues that we, the vulnerable countries, are going to be raising there. What do we do about this climate migration that is now being forced? It's happening. We cannot ignore it anymore. And there's a global responsibility to take care of these people who are losing their homes and their livelihoods.
Absolutely. I think the areas like Sundarbans, which virtually contribute nothing to this cauldron of climate change, are being most affected, need to be discussed at the global level. And those who are responsible should compensate the areas like Sundarban, the people in Sundarban, because they are being suffering for whatever they have done. So I think I'll come back to you because we need to discuss Glasgow, and I need to go back to Javed Sir. But before that, to Dr. Voda. Dr. Voda, we are talking about COVID, we are talking about climate change, but there are other issues which may be related, but there are other issues. For example, I remember that you were releasing some time back, in fact, I wrote about it, about the Global Biodiversity Report and how the biodiversity has been impacted in this period. So Dr.